It be said that one of the greatest tragedies of Spider-Man's life is when he failed to stop a robber when he had the chance, and later the same guy would kill his Uncle Ben. But roughly 11 years later, Spider-Man would face a tragedy that would rock him down to his core, and one of his greatest fears would come true. For most readers of Amazing Spider-Man series in the 60s and the 70s, it was safe to assume that Peter would eventually marry the love of his life, his funny Valentine, Gwen Stacy. But sadly, this would never happen. In this episode of Tony's Comic Spotlight, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of a story that shocked readers around the world, and its impact is still being felt to this day. In this episode, we shine a spotlight on Amazing Spider-Man issue number 121, The Night Gwen Stacy Died. In the previous issue, Harry Osborn had taken LSD, which made him fall into a clinical psychosis. This issue begins with Peter as Spider-Man now watching through their apartment window as Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane Watson are at Harry's bedside. The Osborn's Dr. Ray tells Gwen and Mary Jane that Harry has been taking drugs again. He gives Harry a shot of Thorazine, a tranquilizer, to offset the effect of LSD. Spider-Man decides to do a quick change on the rooftop and go inside, where he is then confronted by Norman Osborn. Norman blames Peter for what has happened to Harry, and later in this issue cracks under pressure, returning to the Green Goblin persona. Peter, on his way to the Daily Bugle building, feels a cold coming on from his change of climate between Montreal and New York. While talking to Robbie Robertson at the Bugle, dropping off some pictures of the Hulk from his Montreal assignment, J. Jonah Jameson walks in and tells Robertson about Peter to get this disease-ridden menace out of my building. Before Peter leaves, he points out that Robbie should have Jameson send him a bonus check for about $200 for the pictures. When Norman leaves his son's bedside, he begins to think how he has failed him as a father. Then he starts to hallucinate and sees his enemy Spider-Man coming at him. Soon he flees from the apartment out into the street till he goes to Manhattan's Lower East Side. There, in a place he had almost forgotten, lies his Green Goblin paraphernalia. Then, after returning to the Goblin persona, he decides to kidnap Gwen. She is standing at the window of Peter and Harry's apartment, wishing there was some way she could help Harry when the Green Goblin comes flying into view. When Spider-Man finally swings back to the apartment, all he finds is a pumpkin lantern and satchel left behind by the Green Goblin. He soon realizes that Gwen had been kidnapped and that he must rely on his spider sense to lead him to where the Goblin is. His spider sense leads him to the George Washington Bridge, as it is Norman Osborn's favorite president, where he spots the Green Goblin standing next to a motionless Gwen Stacy. At the bridge, Spider-Man attempts to get to Gwen, but must fight the Goblin with everything he has. Both Spider-Man and the Goblin fight until the Goblin swoops down, knocking Gwen off the side of the bridge. Spider-Man then goes to save her, and as his webbing catches her, her neck breaks and she dies instantly. Spider-Man praises himself as he cradles the lifeless body of Gwen until he realizes that she is dead. The Goblin taunts him, saying that she was dead before your webbing reached her. A fall from that height would kill anyone before they struck the ground. Holding the lifeless body of Gwen in one arm, Spider-Man raises his fist into the air, vowing to destroy and make the Goblin pay for the death of the woman he loved. To be concluded next week. The idea of killing Peter's love interest was derived from the Terry and Pirate series, where the main character's love interest also died. The Night Gwen Stacy Died was loosely adapted in films, Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. In Spider-Man, Green Goblin kidnaps Spider-Man's love interest and throws her off a bridge, though the love interest is Mary Jane, and Spider-Man successfully saves her. Then in the following battle, the Green Goblin is impaled by his own glider like in the comics. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the Green Goblin is Harry Osborn instead of Norman, and Gwen Stacy falls from a clock tower instead of a bridge. Upon her death, the clock stops at 121, referencing the issue in which she dies. A fan poll conducted by Marvel Comics for their series of 100 Greatest Marvels of All Time voted this issue to be the 6th greatest issue of all time. The death of Gwen Stacy shocked the American comic book community. Previously, it had been unthinkable to kill off such an important character, the girlfriend of a protagonist with a large fan base. Generally, a superhero did not fail so disastrously unless it was their origin story. This story arc has been This story arc has been proposed as a marker of beginning of the end of the Silver Age of comics and the beginning of the darker, grittier Bronze Age. The subsequent tendency for the wives and girlfriends of male superheroes to meet grim fates was referred to as the Gwen Stacy syndrome. The comic features a snap sound effect next to Gwen Stacy's head in the panel in which Spider-Man's webbing catches her. In The Amazing Spider-Man number 125, Marvel Comics editor Roy Thomas wrote in the letters column that it saddens us to have to say the whiplash effect she underwent when Spidey's webbing stopped her so suddenly was in fact what killed her. In fact, it was impossible for Peter to save her. He couldn't have swung down in time. The action he did take resulted in her death. If he had done nothing, she still would have certainly perished. There was no way out. In the History Channel special Spider-Man Tech, Stan Lee states that her neck was indeed snapped. Physicist and comic collector James Kakalios, in his book The Physics of Superheroes, states that in the real world, the whiplash effect would have killed her. The comic book Civil War Casualties of War Captain America Iron Man concurred that the proximate cause of death was the sudden stop during a high-speed fall. An issue of Peter Parker's Spider-Man revisits the issue and further confirms Gwen Stacy died of a broken neck to the use of the webbing. For some time, however, fans speculated that the shock of the fall itself caused Gwen Stacy's death, due to the Green Goblin telling Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man number 121, "Romantic idiot, she was dead before the webbing reached her. A fall from that height would kill anyone," before they struck the ground. In the 1987 edition of the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, Gwen's death is attributed to the fall, not to Spider-Man's webbing. In the fourth issue of Marvels, it was reported that she died from the shock of the fall. However, Phil, a photographer and witness, is unsure about what exactly killed her. As John Romita Sr. recalled, Stan Lee's initial reaction towards Gwen Stacy's death was negative because he thought that Romita, Conway, and Thomas had done it behind his back, and he demanded that they bring her back immediately. Thomas, Romita, and the other editorial board members, however, convinced him otherwise, stating that this would be an embarrassing silliness that could ruin the impact of her death. The upcoming What If Dark Spider-Gwen number 1 will feature a timeline where Peter dies while saving Gwen from the Green Goblin, leading to Gwen becoming Spider-Woman to avenge his death. Non-canonical parallel universe story in What If number 24, What If Gwen Stacy Had Lived? Spider-Man saves Gwen by jumping after her rather than catching her with a web line, allowing him to cushion her from the impact as they hit the water and subsequently give her CPR. In the aftermath of this rescue, he proposed to Gwen after revealing his secret identity to her. And in a confrontation with the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn finally fought off his evil side when Harry moved to protect him regardless of what he had become. Their life, however, was not destined to be a happy one. To ensure its victory, the Goblin has sent J. Jonah Jameson proof of Spider-Man's real identity, which Jonah had subsequently published and used to acquire a warrant for Peter's arrest, thus forcing Peter to escape from the police mere moments after his wedding to Gwen. As this issue ended, Gwen departed with Joe Robbie Robertson, who promised Gwen that they would do whatever they could to help Peter. I hope everybody enjoyed this look at Amazing Spider-Man 121, The Death of Gwen Stacy, as we celebrate its 50th anniversary. This is a pretty dark book, but it's probably one of my favorite Spider-Man stories. I mean, you don't really Spider-Man deal with this kind of tragedy a lot, and this tragedy really was right up there with the death of Uncle Ben as one of his greatest failures. If you're enjoying the content, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It does mean a lot, and I want to thank everybody for continuing to watch the videos and support the channel. I really do appreciate it. Coming up next week, of course, we're going to do 121. We got to do Amazing Spider-Man 122. So next week, episode number 25 will feature Amazing Spider-Man 122, The Green Goblin's Last Stand. And tomorrow night, over on the Comiverse YouTube channel, we will have the Into the Comiverse episode 2, where we'll be talking about the good or bad opinions of facsimile editions. So I hope everyone sticks around for that. And until next time, thank you for watching. Be safe, take care, and God bless. See you.